All right, to kick off the end of the afternoon, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the current AMSSM President, team physician at the University of Utah, professor in the Department of Orthopedics, adjunct professor in the Department of Medicine at Utah. And I guess I first met Amy, we were talking about this yesterday, Dr. Powell. This is the first time I've ever called her that, I think. 15 years ago, when we were fellows at UCLA, we rotated at the time in Park City, and Amy was an attending at the ski clinic. And I think what's so amazing about her is that she's just always so relaxed. And if you've been in a ski clinic or when you're there, it's a hard place to be relaxed sometimes. And I think that was a great way to meet someone who's been like that with a lot of things. She's been a friend, a mentor, a colleague. She and I are both internal medicine, so we've had some other things that we've overlapped in, and it's really an honor to have her here. Thanks, Amy.
Can you guys, am I on? Yeah, now you can hear me. Thank you for that really nice intro, Sam, and it's been really an honor to be your friend and colleague working together in this organization for like 15 years. It's crazy. We're the old people now. So yes, my name's Amy Powell, and I was asked to talk about leadership. So I'll start by saying that I have nothing to disclose, except that I don't have everything right. And I think that when you're asked to talk about leadership, people probably assume that you've got your stuff figured out. And I'm more of a, let's enjoy the journey along the way and kind of figure things out together. And I think if you are exposed to somebody in a leadership role who comes across as supremely confident and they do have all their stuff together, they're either really overly confident or really superhuman or some combination of the two. So I wanted to just start with that. This is just the outline of what I'll cover today in the next 20 to 30 minutes. It's a little bit nebulous because the next speaker, Bianca Edison, I think is 20 minutes. And so I might go a little bit over. She'll probably go a little bit under her allotted time, but we'll work it out in the end. So I wanted to start with just a little bit about me, because I think it'll frame the discussion about what I'm gonna hopefully give you advice about in terms of concrete leadership advice moving forward through and beyond fellowship. Leadership in general, leadership within AMSSM specifically, and then specifically because CMS, Dr. Dixit, first time I've called you that too, asked me to talk about women in leadership. I'll mention WILL, which is a program within AMSSM that was brought to us a few years back by Dr. Kathy Deck, one of our past presidents. And then I'll just kind of end with some simple advice, like what I wish I knew starting fellowship. And that'll kind of be what we'll talk about. So this is me. So I grew up in Tacoma, Washington. This is the Narrows Bridge. I grew up basically in a home that was directly across the street from a big Olympic swimming pool, and my parents turned me into a swimmer because they wanted me to get out of the house. So that was my sport growing up. I ended up going to Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, like as far as you could go away from Tacoma, Washington. And I feel like that actually framed a lot of where my leadership perspective comes from. Smith is a small liberal arts college. It's a women's college, so all leadership roles are women owned. And I think that teaches you a lot about being a woman leader in the setting of leading other women too. I then came home, I then came home to Seattle, the University of Washington, for medical school, and stayed on at Virginia Mason Medical Center for internal medicine residency and met my primary mentor there. You'll hear about her in a minute, Dr. Rosemary Agustini, who basically, it's a long story, that kind of dragged me kicking and screaming into sports medicine. And I will be eternally grateful to her for doing that. But that's how I ended up in this field, actually. Ended up going to Cleveland Clinic for fellowship, and despite everything I thought would happen, did not go back to Seattle. I was planning on returning to the residency program I came from, working with Dr. Agustini, and I ended up taking an academic medicine job at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City for a 3 to 5 year gig, and it's been 18 years. And so life kind of throws things at you and you have to live with curveballs, and it turns out it's been a good fit. So that's wonderful. So that's kind of a little bit about my background. So professionally, this is what I do. So I get to take care of our fellows. I get to take care of residents who want to be fellows. This is actually somebody in your fellowship class. I don't know if she's here. Dr. Sarah Walker is in Boston this year as a sports medicine fellow, and she's been somebody that I've gotten to work with for the last 3 years. I take care of our Utah athletes. So I primarily work with basketball and women's gymnastics. And just as an aside, we have 2 Utah athletes in the Olympics this year, so go Utes. Peripherally take care of some other stuff when people need help. I have a full clinical practice, and if we get lucky, we get puppies in clinic, which is super therapeutic. Ski clinic is awesome because there are always dogs in clinic, which is really, really nice. But my clinical practice is kind of a wide range sports medicine practice with, ages from like 5 to 102, and I love the kids, which I never thought I would say as an internist, but I still really, really love the older people. And so it's nice to have a really wide variety. And then one of the more fun things I get to do is work with this group. So this is the current AMSSM Board of Directors. And this is a group of really awesome people from all over the country that are leading this organization, and they're thoughtful. They think big, they want to see the organization move forward, and that's just, again, one of the more fun professional things that I get to do. So then personally, I'm married. This is my husband, Neil, with the big pretzel. We like traveling, we like eating. He tells me every day that he was too smart to go to medical school. And on most days, I disagree with him, and I can't believe I get paid for what I do. But some days I think he's right. Just, we all have bad days. He is a mechanical engineer who works in aerospace. We don't have kids, but are really involved with our, the tree button is the one I'm looking for, are really involved with our goddaughters. They're 13-year-old twins, and they are hilarious, and we absolutely adore them. We have a really awkward cat named Sam, who shows up on Zoom meetings during telemedicine things where it's like the worst time when you're having this intense conversation with somebody about somebody important, and he'll just come up over your shoulder and be like, hi. So that's Sam. And while I was a swimmer growing up, I've turned into a tennis player as an adult and really enjoy spending time with AMSSM colleagues at meetings playing tennis. So here we are at Duke with Tracy Ray and Bert Fields, who are 2 people that you'll meet eventually along the way. Okay, so moving on to the topic, right? So what is leadership? I have no idea. You can Google leadership and you'll come up with like 50 different definitions. So the way that I've thought about it is an effective leader sets a vision and then creates a path, chooses a team, and then probably most importantly, trusts and empowers their team to do their job well. Will kind of measure outcomes along the way, circle back to determine success, and then start the whole process over again. So that's maybe one thought in terms of leadership, but that's one of 5 million thoughts when it comes to how to define leadership. So I would be remiss to talk about leadership in AMSSM and in terms of like setting a vision without starting with a little bit of history. And I don't want to get super geeked out on this, but I really want the incoming folks to understand the impact that this group of people had on our society. So these are our founders. These 20 people came together in an organized fashion with a passion for sports medicine, a desire to basically create a new specialty, put together an organization, found Jody, who worked out of her basement for years before she actually had an office, put their own money into this, including, and I kid you not, one of the founders taking out a second mortgage on his home to fund the first AMSSM meeting. And the pictures that you see up here are folks that are passionate about this organization. Some of them are no longer around, but many of them are past presidents. And they are my mentors, or people who have mentored my mentors, people who have mentored Dr. Dixit's mentors, and people that you'll see around. And we owe them a debt of gratitude for doing what they did. They are AMSSM, really, when it comes down to it. So when you think about the organization, I joined, I think, in 1998, and the membership was in the 800s, so you get your member number. I'm 877. And now there are like 4,400 plus. So this organization has grown exponentially, or really rapidly. I shouldn't say exponentially, that's an exaggeration. But instead of now thinking about, how are we going to afford the next meeting, we're thinking about organizational strategic priorities, like creating a collaborative research network that has empowered our members to really work on establishing themselves as credible researchers that will take us organizationally into the next millennium. And things like the advocacy program, and I think you've heard from Brian Williams. Brian is our advocacy director, and Cynthia Labella chairs the practice and policy committee. And we've got basically tentacles in all 50 states to kind of look at what's going on from an advocacy level that we need to think about organizationally and how we can position ourselves, which is just really cool to think about these 20 people sitting in this room and looking at what we've become today, which is really pretty darn astronomical. A couple other things that have happened, the research summits that have been put together so far, including the youth early sports specialization, that was a couple years ago. The more recent one, exercises medicine. These have kind of put us on the map. So not only have they allowed for our own members to kind of be teed up for really good collaboration with other members, but it's kind of put us on a map in terms of what we're doing organizationally, in terms of promoting healthy sport, public health, working with other organizations. And just as maybe a fun example, just this last week, we were invited to be on a White House COVID response team call. So they invited us because they want to kind of engage the sports community into helping improve vaccination rates for kids going through sports physicals. And how can we work as an organization to help the current administration with improving vaccination rates in eligible kids? They came to us, which is super cool. That would not have happened with the 20 people that I put on the prior slide. But that's kind of where we're headed in terms of our direction, which is really great. So the current board is visionary, is thinking about stuff not from a one-year perspective, but more like a 10, 20, where is AMSSM going to be in 30 years down the road? And I think our trajectory is really promising. So if you think about, again, going back to the founders, they set the vision, but then they trusted the leadership teams that have come through over time to kind of take it from there. And you guys, as future AMSSM leaders, will be standing up here at some point feeling completely inadequate to do a talk like this, but be able to come back to, this is where we came from, this is where we are now, and this is where we're heading, which is really fairly awesome. So that's just the past and the future, hopefully too. Okay, so leadership within AMSSM. I think you guys have heard this before, but like they say in medical school, if you don't hear it 5 times, it's probably not important. So we get asked all the time, how do I get involved? Like, how do I become a leader? I want to be somebody who's really prominent in this field. And it's really, really simple. Join a committee. And so I put the email address, amsssm.org. On the website, there's in the upper left-hand corner, a drop-down menu about us, and then the committees fall just to the right of that drop-down menu. There are 9 committees, and I think all of them are open to fellow members. And so you can kind of pick and choose, and you don't have to choose just one committee. I put Dr. Nemeff's picture. So Dr. Bob Nemeff was my fellowship director, and I was maybe 2 years out of fellowship, and I had to tell this story, so this is why I put his picture up so I wouldn't forget. I was kind of frustrated because I was in a committee and I can't remember which one it was. And I was like, wow, I'm not getting any work. I'm not getting any stuff to do. I really want to be more involved. And he's like, well, what actions have you personally taken to get involved? And I was like, well, I just thought they would ask me. And so here's the key. So if you want to be involved, be intentional about being involved. You don't have to wait until our next annual meeting in April to do this. You can actually touch base with any of the committee chair people by sending them a direct email through the AMSSM website. My name is so-and-so. I'm interested in your committee. I would like to be active on your committee. And then this is how specifically I would like to be active on your committee. And if you decide to do this, if you follow through, I guarantee you will get more work. And this is the kind of dirty secret in terms of how our organization works, is that all of this stuff happens at the committee level. And the more you do within your committee, the more leadership opportunities you're given, the more networking opportunities that you're given, and the more you get to kind of grow within the organization. So in addition to this being a networking opportunity, You get to collaborate with your colleagues. You get to shape the voice of the organization moving forward, and you become a leader that gets to stand up and talk about leadership. So that's how it works, if that makes sense. And I think Jim talked with you about that as well. Okay, so I have some advice, and I kind of broke this down into things that worked for me and advice that I was given, some combo of the two. So I have leadership as a fellow, leadership as kind of an early attending, and then leadership as mid-career, which I put in kind of the 10 to 15 year mark, and I can't go beyond that because I'm only 18 years into it. So touch base with me in another 10 years and I'll tell you about the later career stuff. So I think the concrete steps that I would suggest taking now are to start thinking about yourself as a leader, even if you don't feel like one. And I know that there's a lot of, I don't belong here, I can't believe I got a fellowship, everybody else in the room is so smart. Just ixnay that for two reasons. Number one, you do belong here. And number two, the team that you're going to be involved with in your fellowship, and I'm assuming that most of you will independently cover a high school, for instance, and most of you will be working directly with an athletic trainer and parents who are taking care of or trying to take care of their kids that are injured, and you are the leader of that team. And so even if you don't feel that way, you need to kind of embrace the role now because it's the start of building your own professional identity. So I think that that's maybe first step. So I would say medicine in general is a team sport, but sports medicine is like a team sport in all caps, just in terms of how multidisciplinary this is. So we work with athletic trainers and physical therapists and sports dietitians and the mental health providers, and we all work together for the best interest of the athlete. And I might get in trouble for saying this because I think the dean of my school of medicine is very much into the interprofessional education, and we're all a group that collaborates in different ways, and nobody is specifically a team leader, but I kind of disagree. The team doctor is the team leader. And so if you're the team doctor for your high school and you're functioning independently, the buck stops with you. And yes, you have backup. I don't mean to say that you're on an island and that your attendings won't help you, but really if you're on the field with a football player that has a dislocated shoulder, you get to decide what to do. The athletic trainer can help, but that's you. So I think that the starting point is just to say, I'm the leader of this sports medicine team, and that's where my starting point is. So that would be my hopeful goal for all of you guys in the fellowship years, just to start creating that personal and professional identity. So then starting out, like it feels like fellowship is gonna maybe end in 5 years, but the year will fly by so fast. I mean, basically, you'll be looking for jobs in 6 months. You will be kind of promoting yourselves as this is what I think I want to do, even if you don't know. And so I think that the next step is to think about leadership in the first 3 to 5 years of your practice. And I say 3 to 5 as opposed to 1 to 5, because I really feel like, at least for me personally, the first 2 years we're still drinking from a fire hose, figuring out how to show up to work on time, where the lunchroom was, where the bathroom was. And so at about the 3-year point, I could kind of settle in and sort of figure out, like, this is my role, this is what I am thinking I want to do. And so in this kind of time frame, you get to figure out what you absolutely love. And some of that you'll know in fellowship, and I'll give you an example. So at Cleveland Clinic, team physician role was really important, and we covered, everything from high schools to pretty high level professional sports. And I discovered pretty early that pro sports are not for me. I really like high school and college athletes. So when I was looking for a job, that was kind of what I was looking for. And then kind of what drives you. For me, it's teaching and education. And so if I was kind of thinking about how to craft my future, it would be some combination of taking care of the right population of athletes, having a supportive crew around me in terms of my partners, and being able to teach. And that's actually exactly what has happened, which has been really, really cool. So I think it doesn't have to fall into place within that first 3 to 5 years, but at least thinking about kind of what you want to do within that time frame is kind of nice. And that allows you to kind of set goals and figure out what you want to do. One thing that Dr. Goolsby and I were talking to a group of fellows last night at dinner about the importance of carving out time early on, like when you're crafting your first contract. carving out time early on for things that you think you want to prioritize. So if it's going to be administrative and leadership work, if it's going to be teaching education, either in a residency or medical school level, if it's going to be research, that having that time carved out of your schedule early is 100 times easier than trying to carve it out later when you're already busy in your clinical practice. So just some things to think about as you're moving into the next world. So this is also the time I feel like when you're a team leader. So I'll use me as an example. So right now my team is an athletic trainer, 2 medical assistants, and then I would say a bunch of other people that help us run our practice really smoothly. So I'm a more collaborative listener kind of a person, as opposed to a dominant, authoritative, you have to do this kind of thing. I can be that way if I need to, but I really don't like to. And just kind of crafting that vision for your team to function well together makes you as a physician look better. So in terms of thinking yourself as a physician leader, meaning a leader of your clinical team in your day-to-day clinical practices, which I still think is a little separate than how you're going to work with your team physician role in an outside like a high school setting or a college setting. But even your day-to-day clinical practice, you as the leader of your team can kind of think about crafting a vision of what that looks like for you. And I'm a personal fan of some of the personality inventories like Myers-Briggs and DISC, and you guys have probably done some of these. I like DISC right now. It's my personal favorite. It's an inventory that allows you to know what your communication style is when you're not stressed, and then your adaptive styles when you are. And so you know that if you're having a really bad day because somebody just totally ticked you off, that you might be a little bit nasty to the person who is taking care of you, and that's not going to go well. So you're, say, like your athletic trainer or somebody like that. So I think that those are nice to have in your thought process for the 3 to 5 year, building your team, being the team leader, having a really successful functional clinical practice. And I just kind of said that bottom one too. Okay, and then middle career, which is basically going to be simple because I don't have much advice here. But the best advice that I was given when I was actually, I think, a second-year medical student by somebody outside of medicine 100%, was to think about how you would define your best day ever and think about what it would take to get you there. And for some people, you might be like, oh, I want to be on a beach in Hawaii. How do I get there? But for some people, it might be like, wow, I really enjoy working with, underserved kids, or I really enjoy working in a setting where I get to use my primary language, or, and so just thinking about, I think this is kind of the time to think about what you're going to do within your community to give back maybe a little bit, and then to look at your plate. So by the probably 8 to 10 year period, and Dr. Dixon, I'm sure, can relate to some of this too. If you're a follow-through person and you do the stuff, you get asked to do a lot of stuff, and you say yes, and you say yes, and you say yes, and then you've got 24 hours in your day, and some of it is for sleep, and some of it is for family, and some of it is for work, and you're like answering emails at 2 in the morning, and I still do this, so I'm not saying I'm perfect, but you're answering all these emails late at night, and your sleep or exercise or nutrition or wellness suffers. And so I would say in this time frame, I'd be really careful about burnout and figuring out what your passion. So going back to that 3 to 5 years, what drives me? What are my passions? And how do I want to really build my career and my program so that by the time you're in the 10 to 15 year mark, you can start handing off the stuff that maybe you used to find enjoyable to somebody else. And that's okay. It's totally fine to do that. So this is what I'm personally working on right now, is making sure that my plate is full, but not overfull. And so I think that that's been the evolution of where I've been, both in terms of like practice and leadership to date so far. So that's that. I just think if you focus on what you love, you'll be a more effective leader. And that is kind of both your basic day-to-day clinical role, but also in leadership roles like in organizations like AMSSM. Okay, so moving on to women in leadership leads. So just a few things here. So women in medicine occupy more than 50% of the physician workforce, but only 22% of full professors, 18% of department chairs, and 17% of medical school deans. And there's still a wage gap between men and women physicians who do the same job. And so we've got some work to do. So with that background, I wanted to start with this. So we have had 27 AMSSM presidents, and 5 have been women, going up to 2018. So Deborah Squires, Margot Patukian, Kim Harmon, Cindy Chang, and Kathy Dack. So that's 26% up to 2018. So we're already doing better, I think, in terms of women in leadership within our organization than most organizations of our size, especially in a fairly male-dominated field. Jim and Jody can tell me, but I'm pretty sure our male to female ratio is about 75-25. It varies a little bit year to year. But basically up until 2018, we mirrored our organizational kind of breakup. So if you add in myself and Marcy Goolsby, who will be president in 2023 and 2024, we'll be up to 31%. So we're doing a pretty good job. I mean, obviously there are other things to work on. We need to get deans and medical school leadership and department chairs and all that stuff. But organizationally, this has been a really pretty safe space for women physicians. And I'm really, really proud of that. And so in thinking about why, I have a couple of theories about it, and I'm not totally sure if it's true, but these are my 2 theories. I feel like women in AMSSM have abundant allies, male allies in particular. And one example that I remember, and Dr. Harmon may not remember this, but it was before she was president, and she gave a fantastic main stage podium presentation on something I don't remember, but it was wonderful. And on the panel during the Q&A, one of the male founders and past presidents said something in, again, a national meeting, main podium session: "Nobody can outsmart Dr. Harmon. I stopped trying years ago. I don't know why you would even bother." And that's just like that allyship and the support in a national prominent setting. It kind of validates everything that women within AMSSM are doing. And there have been some bad things too, don't get me wrong, we're not perfect, but that's one thing I specifically remember, and it really struck me that we've got great partnership within this organization that it transcends gender, I think. In a lot of ways, it's, again, not perfect. But the second thing is that within the organization, women support each other professionally. And I'm sure you have too. I'm sure I know I have been in settings where if you're a woman that's ascending to a leadership role, you're considered a total threat. And I would say that hasn't been my case at all, at least personally. I have felt nothing but incredible support among the women leaders that have preceded me. And I kind of wonder, this is my theory, if it's because most of us come from a sports background. And I was thinking about this when I was listening to Katie Ledecky being interviewed yesterday about her upcoming Olympic events. And apparently, I think it's the 400 free, where there's a young competitor, I think an American competitor, who's like right on her tail. And the interviewer, I can't remember who it was, asked Katie Ledecky, you know, how do you feel about this? You're being threatened. And she was like, bring it on. The competition makes me better. I want to compete against the best people. I want them to push me. And I kind of feel like within the sports world, that maybe transitions a little bit over into what we have seen with women leaders in AMSSM, like, bring it on. I want you to be better. I want the whole organization to be better. And so I think the combination of those 2 things has made this a really safe space for women, and I hope that continues. Okay, so Women in Leadership Lead. This was brought to the organization by Kathy Dack, so the past president 2017-18, because it was really successful at her academic medical center. And it's been kind of, the torch has been held by Kelsey Logan, who's wonderful. And this has been a really great thing. It has been an instructional course lecture every year. Next year, it's going to be an ICL plus a main podium presentation. All AMSSM members are welcome. You don't have to be a woman to go to WIL. Allies are absolutely welcomed. Past meetings have included things like how to find your elevator speech, you know, promotion in 2 minutes. What are you going to tell people about what your goals are? Finding your true north. What do you love? What's your passion? Leadership with AMSSM, negotiating contracts, retention, promotion, tenure for academics, like all sorts of leadership opportunities that are available both within AMSSM, but outside of AMSSM through organizations like AAMC and things like that. So it's been a really great networking community. There is a specific will group on AMSSM Collaborate that you all are welcome to join and post questions or dilemmas or anything that you have. So please, you're welcome to join us. And then I think the other thing that's helped us is kind of lifting as you rise. So mentorship has been, I think, a really important thing in the sports medicine world because we started out so slow and have grown pretty rapidly. And so one of the striking things about our board meeting yesterday, we did this fun social thing. I think you guys did a scavenger hunt too, right? So we did no, you're shaking your head. Oh, bowling. Okay, so we did bowling after a scavenger hunt and along the way kind of talked to people. And the striking thing about the question, how did you get into sports medicine, was that pretty much every single board member had one person, one mentor that guided them through the process. So I mentioned for me, it was Dr. Agustini, but for every other person, there was like one mentor that really kind of shaped their decision-making process. You are now that person for somebody else. And so I think the lift as you rise is really important. Don't forget your roots and remember where you came from. The other thing is that, and I've started to do this, in my lifetime, I would love to see a room like this look a lot more like the athletes that we take care of, meaning improving diversity. So I'm starting to try to look at my athletes and patients that I take care of in clinical settings as future medical students and what I can do to improve diversity within our field, like bring up really smart, motivated, talented people to take over this job. I think that would be amazing. So just little things to think about moving forward, which gives me an opportunity to move into the diversity, equity, and inclusion side that Sam also asked me to talk about. So just a few things here. So diversity, equity, inclusion within AMSSM is something that we organizationally have been taking really seriously over the last long time, I would say, but really in a concentrated fashion over the last 15 to 18 months or so. And the process that the board and executive committee have gone through has produced a new policy statement in terms of where we are at organizationally, setting a bar high for where we expect ourselves to be, but also setting, not aspirational, but setting goals for where we want to be in the future. And it really focuses a lot on mentorship, coaching, identifying a pipeline of prospective sports medicine doctors and thinking about ways that we can get there, improving research opportunities, improving academic opportunities, and all the things that we think we need to kind of grow our specialty even more. There is a new, in talking about like getting involved in a committee, there's a new diversity, equity, and inclusion subcommittee, which is being run by Dr. Monique Burton. She is a pediatrician at Seattle Children's who is wonderful. One of your classmates, right? Yeah. In college and fellowship, right? And she's fantastic, and that lives under the membership subcommittee. So if you go to the website that I mentioned and go to the drop-down list to get to the DEI subcommittee, you would have to go through Dr. Naila Coleman, also a pediatrician. She's at Washington National Children's, and yes. And so if you send one of them an email and say, hey, I'm really interested in this work, they have working groups under the subcommittee, maybe 7 of them that are really active this year, trying to get some stuff done that the executive committee and board had put forth to them as goals, things to accomplish, to kind of get our organization moving in the next direction. So a really good opportunity to get involved. And then hot off the press, the board yesterday approved the next Collaborative Research Network Research Summit to be Health Disparities in Sport and Exercise Medicine, which is going to be really, really cool. And I think getting involved in either the DEI subcommittee or the research committee would be a great tee up to potentially helping out with this research network. And just so Steph doesn't panic, I got IRF's permission to say that. So, okay. All right. Okay, and just because I get the podium for a minute, I'll tell you guys about one other thing. So the Agustini grant. So Dr. Rosemary Agustini, I mentioned, my primary mentor. She was the first sports medicine fellow in the US. And I happened to just do residency where she was practicing. So talk about falling in the right place at the right time. But just to kind of summarize the work that she's done over the years, kind of under with no fanfare or anything like that, before it was cool, she took care of all the inner city high schools that nobody else would even set foot in. And so her passion over the years has been making sure that there's been equitable access to quality health care for people that don't have access to it. So there's a new grant through the AMSSM Foundation, the Agustini grant, which is designed to, it's really geared toward medical students, but it's designed to allow medical students to reach into their communities, to make STEM cool for kids that may not think it's cool, to expose kids and young adults to sports medicine, science in general, medicine in general, but hopefully sports medicine in particular, if there is a sports medicine interest going into it. And while it's directed at medical students can easily and should probably partner with fellows and faculty to get this off the ground. So these are small grants. They're not $1 million by any means. And we hopefully will be able to grow this program over time. But to honor Dr. Agustini and what she's done over many, many decades of a sports medicine career, I think this is a great way to start. And if you think about it as a medical student or even as a fellow, this is something that hopefully would be promoted at an AMSSM annual meeting, can show up on your CV, and you get to do something good for your community. So it's like a win, win, win. So just wanted to make everybody aware of that. Okay, last, what I wish I knew, starting fellowship. So moving on from leadership, just like, let's just take care of each other for a moment. So things I wish I knew, everybody feels overwhelmed. It's not just you. You do belong in the room. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. You're doing a fellowship because you want to get better at this, not because you know everything now. And so your faculty know this too, even if you don't think they do. Read at night. Prepare, but sleep, because without sleep, you're going to be grouchy and ineffective. So make sure that you're doing your best to prepare, but don't forget to take care of yourself. Be really, really nice to all the support staff. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got, I think I learned it too late. If you're really nice to the team that's supporting your attending, you will be integrated into the team. They will totally take care of you, and they are your best luck and friend moving forward through your fellowship program. Start your research project early. If you haven't already, do it tomorrow. So this is why you're here though, right? It's the 12 months just passes in like the bat of an eye. So take everything in, take pictures, enjoy your co-fellows if you have them. Some of the best friendships that you'll forge are within this room, in meetings in the future, and in just the time that you spend together bonding over the craziest experiences that you'll probably have in your entire medical career. I will tell you an NFL deodorant story if we have time. When you're, this is actually a really important one. I didn't learn this one until maybe 4 or 5 months into my fellowship. So when you're attending is explaining a problem to a patient. So you've seen the patient, you've gone out to present, you're coming back and your attending is there explaining patellofemoral pain or something like that. Your attending is actually teaching you. And so one of the best things that I did once I figured that out during fellowship, which was again a little too late, was I started taking notes and kind of crafting my own spiels for issues that come up commonly: rotator cuff problems, patellofemoral pain, ACL injuries, and a bunch of other things. But just if you have an opportunity to work with 4, 5, 10, 15 different people, you'll hear like slight different variations on each of the spiels, and you can pick and choose the things that you like to craft your own for when you get started in your own practice. So I was like, why is this doctor being so verbose with this patient? It's so simple. I already said that, until I realized that it was a teaching moment for me. Okay, so develop and use your network. Start right here. You guys have a great class of fellows that you can all bounce ideas off of and work together moving forward. Hopefully you have ways to communicate with each other. Find your mentors and sponsors and utilize them, especially as you're starting your job hunt down the road. And as part of that, kind of be ready to promote yourself. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm planning to develop in the next 6 months of my training. And then get involved. That's one of the main themes of this. AMSSM has so many opportunities to get involved, which is a really awesome thing as an early sports medicine physician. And even now, start thinking about ways to give back to your communities. It's the ultimate kind of definition of leadership. So with that, I will close, and thank you very much. Thanks for your time.